The next book I read on our very short international book along list this year is The Book of Disappearance by Ibtisam Azem. What if every Palestinian disappeared overnight without any explanation? And you would think that that concept might be insensitive or treated in a weird way, and the book instead uses it to satirize Israeli paranoia gently, and also contrasts that with the emotionally charged and very human grief process of a Palestinian mourning their grandmother. I'll talk about the book itself and the content of the book before we get to my major negatives with it. I thought the sections where the Palestinians disappear were awesome. I love the different perspectives beyond the main two. There's a section where all the people in an apartment building find out, and I was thumbsing up. I was like, very, very good. The writing often feels quite lyrical and stripped back. I love the aggressive repetition of colors occasionally that comes in. That felt very deliberate. And I love the symbolism of our main Israeli character, Ariel, starting to invade our Palestinian character, Alaa's house after he disappears. Because the book doesn't initially lead you to think that that's what's going to be the metaphor, but it builds and you realize that the author's actually being very clever in this symbol of invasion. When Ariel is inside Alaa's house, you see every movement he makes in painstaking detail to really draw attention to how gross it is and how invasive it is. And then it very, very subtly starts to shift. Like, Ariel will leave a light on overnight when he goes out. Ariel will bring a toiletries bag, and that'll include a box of condoms. Like, where's he gonna fuck, bro? Is he gonna fuck in his, like, friend's bed? And he takes over his friend's apartment building in a way that feels kind of reasonable while you're reading it, until you realize, wait a minute, you're just fucking, this isn't your house. Stop reading this man's diary, bro. You're reading the man's diary. And that, as a metaphor, was my favorite part of the book. But there are still plenty of great moments relating to the concept in its actuality. There's an extended, I think, radio broadcast where people are calling in and we hear different perspectives on the Palestinians disappearing. I thought that was a very smart way of introducing the kind of core themes that you want to bring in. I think the book is incredibly earnest, and I think that when the concept shifts from being treated as a real thing in the world to being more of a metaphor, I think the book was able to do both of those successfully. And then it starts to become more grounded in the last 40 pages, which I thought were fantastic. I thought the book had a really, really strong ending. Now we get to negatives. I have to say I really like the author, and I really like the content of this book. I have no issues with that. My issues are with the editor and the translator. The translation here is shoddy, extremely clunky, and literal, and I was not getting on with it. You know, I've been told before that I'm not allowed to pick apart a translator's work if I don't understand the original language they're translating from. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I'm judging how it sounds in English, right? I know it comes from a different language, and I know it comes from a language that has a different structure to English, so it needs to sound good in English because that's the language that I'm reading it in. You're paid to translate it and adapt it to our language. Any AI can just literally write out exactly what each word means. Is translating a case-by-case basis? Sure. Is this a good case? No. On every single page of this book, there was at least one sentence that was grammatically strained. There was often one word too many in a sentence to delete any possibility of colloquial English structuring, and there were hundreds of examples of this, but here are a couple of my favorites. The government has yet to offer any suggestions or solutions as to what is to become of the houses in these areas. The word "to" in the sentence 3 fucking times. 3. Our country is going through a difficult period that is even more dangerous than that during which we declared our independence in 1948. Holy fuck. Here's how a translator who is paying respect to our language would adapt that. Our country is going through a difficult period, even more dangerous than when we declared our independence in 1948. I removed the word that was in the sentence twice for some reason. Ariel said that Iran was Israel's major problem and they had to focus on Hezbollah because it is its long arm in Lebanon. The word "it" is used twice here to refer to two different things. Oh my fucking god. It's like an essay written by a 15-year-old 5 minutes before the deadline. It's so bad. I could flick to any random page and find a sentence that could be streamlined and made to sound less like an AI translation of Arabic. All of the dialogue is really formal and belabored. Everything feels like it's at an arm's reach. Alaa's sections in particular do not feel like they were written by a human, and they especially don't feel like somebody writing in a diary. There's one thing the author does which I think is intentional, but I don't agree with it, which is to remove the subject in consecutive sentences in the diary. It's like a diaristic thing. It's something you'd see in Bridget Jones. Here's an example. When I walk in Palestine, I feel that I'm walking on corpses. That's page 90. So it missed an I there. It missed a subject. On page 189, as if I'm punishing them for giving me that opportunity. You missed the I there as well. On page 191, you will be angry and say that I'm still young. I still think that this is a mistake, but I'm giving the author and translator massive benefit of the doubt and go, alright, let's say it's intentional. Now, if this is an intentional thing on the part of, let's say, the author, to imply that this is the colloquial part, it's a diary and it's being written in a diaristic way, so there can be some colloquialisms. Why the fuck is every other part of the diary written like a robot? It doesn't make sense for there to be one weird thing in the diary entries when everything else is exceptionally formal English. None of the writing here has been changed in any way from the original. There is no adaptation whatsoever. The author put love and care into this book, and nobody else put love and care into creating a translation for it, and that does include the editor of this book. On page 33, although they downed a whole bottle of Nero d'Avola, they didn't felt tipsy. Should be feel there. On page 200, one of the sentences was, it was 4:45 in the morning. I don't feel bad bullying an indie publisher or an underpaid translator for all of this janky shit, because if this wasn't a library copy that I have, it would be a book that I paid for. And if I paid for it, I have the right to criticize it as aggressively as I like. If the translation were more responsive to how English flowed, if we removed all the fucking mistakes, if the diary entries sounded more like a diary and weren't so clunky and formal that I had to read them at a snail's pace, my immersion wouldn't have been broken and I would have enjoyed the book much more. But again, no shade to the author at all. I really loved what this book was going for a lot of the time. It was just other things that ruined it for me. And thanks so much. Bye!